People say money exposes a person's character, but I learned something darker that night. It exposes their soul. When my son invited me to meet his fiancée's wealthy family, I decided not to wear pearls or silk. I went as who they least expected, a fragile, ordinary mother with trembling hands, and a secret that could shatter their glass mansion. The evening smelled like rain and roses when I reached their estate. The house stood tall, proud, like the people living inside it. Every light gleamed as if even the walls wanted to show off. My son Ryan opened the door, his smile polite, rehearsed, and hollow. He hadn't hugged me that gently since he was 10. Behind him stood his fiancée's mother, Mrs. Davenport, a woman carved from wealth, her pearls heavy enough to drown humility. "You must be Ryan's mother," she said, as if the word mother was an inconvenience. I nodded, clutching my small purse, one that still smelled faintly of detergent and old memories. They seated me at the far end of the dinner table. The porcelain plates shone brighter than the conversation. "So, Mrs. Miller," the father asked, swirling his wine, "what do you do?" "I'm retired," I said softly. "I used to clean houses." The silence that followed could have frozen the ocean. Mrs. Davenport smiled, but her eyes betrayed disgust. "How admirable," she murmured. Ryan looked down, pretending not to notice. My son, my pride, my heartbreak. I watched them, the laughter, the arrogance, the way they measured worth in brands, not in love. They saw me as fragile, disposable. But if they'd looked a little deeper, they might have noticed the quiet strength in my shaking hands, the kind of strength that comes from owning the very walls they sit under. Because the truth they didn't know was that the estate they flaunted, the mansion they worshiped, once belonged to me. The rain had started by the time I reached home. The old streetlight outside flickered against my living room window, the same light that had watched me through sleepless nights, unpaid bills, and the long years after my husband died. I took off my damp coat, hung it neatly, and sat by the fire. My fingers brushed over the worn photo frame of Ryan as a little boy, missing teeth, chocolate on his cheek, smiling like the world was kind. Now that same boy couldn't even look at me without shame. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I'd seen what money does to people. It doesn't change them. It unmasks them. And the Davenports, their masks were cracking already. The next morning, I received a call from Ryan. He spoke with the same strained tone I'd heard at that dinner. "Mom, about last night. Could you maybe dress differently next time?" They didn't expect. He hesitated, realizing what he was about to say. They didn't expect someone like me. I finished for him. He went silent. "Ryan," I said quietly, "I raised you to never measure a person's worth by what they wear." "But Mom, it's complicated." "No," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. "It's only complicated when love starts to depend on appearances." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the small chest under my bed and unlocked it. Inside was a faded set of property papers, the deed to the Davenport estate. Once upon a time, that house had been ours. My husband built it from nothing before his business partner, Mr. Davenport, took it away through deceit and signatures. I was too young and too trusting to understand. They'd turned our home into their empire. And now, decades later, my son was marrying into the same family that had stolen everything from us. Fate has a cruel sense of humor, but I had learned to smile back at it. I folded the papers carefully, placed them in my purse, and looked into the mirror. For the first time in years, I didn't see a poor mother. I saw a woman rising from her own ashes, quiet, patient, dangerous in her silence. They thought I was done, but I was only beginning. The night of the second dinner came sooner than I expected. I stood before the same mansion, their mansion, but this time, my hands didn't tremble. The same chandelier light that had once made me feel small, now looked like a spotlight waiting for a performance. I had dressed simply again, not out of humility, but defiance. The faded dress, the same old purse, and inside it, the truth folded neatly in a brown envelope. Ryan opened the door, eyes wide with nervous energy. "Mom, I told them you'd come. Please, just be careful with what you say tonight." I smiled gently. "I always am, darling." Inside, the atmosphere was as polished as their porcelain plates. Mrs. Davenport greeted me with that same stretched smile, the kind that hides more poison than politeness. "Oh, Mrs. Miller, what a pleasant surprise. You came again." "Yes," I said softly. I couldn't miss another chance to dine in my own home. Her smile froze, just for a heartbeat. But I saw it, the flicker of confusion, then the faintest tremor of fear. We sat. The small talk began. Vacations, weddings, charity galas, the same shallow noise of privilege. Then, Mr. Davenport leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting like a man too confident in his lies. So, Mrs. Miller, he began, I hope you enjoyed our little gathering last time. I met his gaze calmly. Oh, I did, especially the decor. You've kept it well, considering it was built by my late husband. The table went silent. Ryan's fork clinked against his plate. Mrs. Davenport's hand stiffened around her wine glass. Excuse me, she whispered. I reached into my purse and placed the brown envelope on the table. Inside the original deed, signed by my husband, stamped with the company seal. This house was ours, I said quietly. Your husband was my husband's business partner. He promised to handle the paperwork while my husband was in the hospital. He never came back. For the first time, I saw color drain from their faces. Mr. Davenport's voice cracked. You can't prove. Oh, but I can. I slid the document closer, and I kept quiet all these years. I raised my son in silence, working jobs beneath my dignity just to protect him from this filth. But now, you've brought him back here, to the scene of the theft. Ryan's eyes widened. Mom, what is she talking about? I turned to him, my voice trembling, not from fear, but release. I'm talking about the truth, son. The empire they flaunt was built on our blood. The papers floated across the table like fallen leaves, fragile, yet unstoppable. No one spoke. Only the sound of the fireplace and the slow tick of a clock filled the silence. Mr. Davenport stared at the documents, as if the past had suddenly come alive to haunt him. His lips parted, searching for a defense, but there was none. You can't just walk in here, and he began. I already did, I interrupted quietly, and I could have done it years ago, but I let you live with your stolen comfort while I rebuilt my dignity from dust. Mrs. Davenport's voice trembled. Why now? Why bring this up after so long? I looked straight into her eyes. Because now my son belongs to your family name, and I won't let him inherit your lies. Ryan's chair scraped against the marble floor. Mom, is this true? Tears blurred my vision as I nodded. Your father trusted this man. He signed everything to him when he was dying. We lost the house, the company, everything. I raised you with nothing, so you'd grow into someone better than the people who destroyed us. He turned toward the Davenports, the same people who once made me feel small. His voice was steady, low. You used my family's pain to build your fortune. Mr. Davenport opened his mouth to protest, but Ryan's next words cut sharper than any blade. You invited me into your home thinking you were gaining a son. What you gained is a mirror. The room shattered in silence again. I rose from my seat, gathered the papers, and placed them gently back into my purse. Keep your chandeliers, I whispered. Keep your marble floors. Every corner of this house remembers the hands that built it, mine and my husband's. You can't erase that with money. Mrs. Davenport looked at me, her pride draining away like color from glass. What will you do now? Nothing, I said softly. The truth has already done enough. I walked out into the cold night, the rain washing over my face like forgiveness. Ryan followed silently behind me, no longer the ashamed son, but a man who finally saw who his mother truly was. We stood by my old car. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I touched his cheek. Don't be. You just learned what they never did, that wealth means nothing without honor. He looked back at the mansion, its windows glowing in the distance. Will you ever forgive them? I smiled sadly. I already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I get to walk away free, while they live forever chained to their guilt. As I drove away, I watched their perfect home fade in the mirror. A palace built on deceit, now haunted by truth. For the first time in years, I didn't feel poor. I felt powerful, because sometimes the richest thing a mother can own is her silence.